In college sports, money talks. The new Pac 12 conference is in one of the most financially insane positions that I've ever seen in my life watching and following college sports. These schools are under enormous financial pressure and risk. Let's break it down. This is the Let's Run podcast. I want to welcome you all to the show today. Really appreciate you checking it out. Really been grateful for all of the growth that we've had on the new YouTube channel. We've got a lot of new subscribers, a lot of people checking out the videos. Obviously, conference realignment is always one of those topics where people are just inherently interested in. And there's always a ton of discussion going around. And, it's kind of a tiring topic in a sense because it never really goes away. You're always kind of dealing with conference realignment. And you can always talk about it in the world of college sports. Sometimes it gets a little tiring because not a lot happens, as is the case right now. Last Monday, I think it was, Ross Dellinger reported on Yahoo that the new Pac-12 had secured a grant of rights for all of its members and that there would soon be, perhaps even the end of last week, a media deal announced. And of course, we are all sitting around and waiting for the official announcement of Texas State to the Pac-12. That seems like it should probably have already happened. Obviously, there is a deadline for Texas State to announce their commitment to the Pac-12. I believe that is July 1st. The exit fee for the Sun Belt goes up after July 1st, and so Texas State should announce that in the next couple of weeks. But they really should announce it this week, I would think. There's no reason really to put it off any longer. And I'm sure that there are people inside that conference that are just like, why can't we just announce this already? Additionally, the mediation talks between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West, it seemed like there was real momentum at the beginning of last week for that settlement to be announced. The parties have been talking we're coming up to a month now. The parties have been talking. Now it's a big, complicated case, a big, complicated issue. And the fact that the parties are still on the table, addressing each other and talking is definitely a good thing. If we heard that mediation had ended and that there wasn't a resolution, I think that there would be a lot of need to worry for both conferences. Actually, both conferences need this mediation to end in a way that is at least as beneficial to both sides of the litigation as possible. But today, I kind of wanted to break down something that's kind of been bothering me as I've been listening to people talking about media and the risk of the Pac-12, and as we've had a little bit more detail. Pete Thamel had a piece reporting about the Pac-12. There's just been people talking about it, CBS Sports, about the Pac-12, the Mountain West, the Pac-12's representations to schools when they initially joined the conference back in October. From what I can tell, and this is, from Thamel's article, from stuff Dellinger has said, and just from common sense, the Pac-12, when they initially took those four schools from the Mountain West, and they were pitching to schools like Utah State, like UNLV, they were making representations about, the future, about what would happen in the new Pac-12. And part of that was clearly snatching a couple of the AAC schools, or maybe more, from that conference, probably snatching UNLV and maybe another conference from the Mountain West, maybe another school from the Mountain West, sorry. And they were presenting media figures, at the $15 million range to people. Now, I know that's actually a fact. In their presentations that they were giving, they were throwing that number around. Not that they were guaranteeing that number, but they were throwing it around as what they were going to get. Again, not a guarantee, but that's the kind of financial picture that they were putting in front of the schools that were leaving the Mountain West and joining the new Pac-12. And so I dug a little bit deeper into the new Mountain West versus the new Pac-12, not that actually at all, into what the old Mountain West would have been compared to the new Pac-12. Now, there's a couple issues when talking about, what could have happened. There are people in the Oregon State and Washington State camp that claim that they were never, because of issues with Pac-12 enterprises, with the logo, with their intellectual property, with the old Pac-12, that Oregon State and Washington State were never going to join the Mountain West. Now, I don't believe that. I think that The Pac-12 leadership and specifically some of the leadership at Oregon State and Washington State could have joined the Mountain West, and that the Mountain West would have been okay with a reverse merger situation where the Mountain West leadership would have ceded most of its control to the new Pac-12 leadership. The Pac-12 didn't want to do that. They took a risk. They struck out in their risk. Their risk did not pay off. Now, that does not mean that the conference won't exist or won't eventually be profitable, but the risk that the Mountain West five schools took to leave the Mountain West and join the Pac-12 has not paid off financially for these schools and will not pay off financially for these schools. Now, I can hear you speaking already. Jason, we don't know what the media deals are going to be. Jason, we don't know what the Mountain West media deal is going to be. What about increased ticket revenue? What about this? What about that? I want to break it all down for you in simple terms, using the realistic information that we have right now, the realistic numbers, figures that have been discussed. Essentially, nobody with any real credibility has said that the number is going to be above $10 million. Now, could there be some weird financial structure or financial incentives for certain schools to get the new Pac-12 media deal above the $10 million mark? Perhaps, but most people have not said that there is going to be that over $10 million is really realistic. 10 million kind of seems like the number, and it could be less than that if the Pac-12 decides that they want to prioritize more exposure in better, slots, TV slots, than maybe more cash upfront for like streaming options like the AAC does. And so, say that the new Pac-12 does get the $10 million. Say it's $9 million or $8 million. Is that financial risk worth what they left in the Mountain West? Absolutely not. So a couple of months ago, I guess it was before actually all this happened, Nevada Sportsnet wrote a really interesting article about the new Big East media deal. Now, the Big East media deal started, the new Big East media deal started in 2023, 2024. And it basically doubled the Big East's media deal. Before that, the Big East had been around the $4 million range, and they got it up to 7.5. So similar to what the Mountain West was, and then they got that number up. Now, obviously, the Big East is a different league than the Mountain West, and UConn has won a couple of national championships. But I think it's indicative that had the Mountain West simply stayed together, I do not think that it is out of the realm of possibility to say that they could have gotten $6.5 or $7 million per school in a media deal. In fact, I think it's pretty likely that they could have done that. And just based on how other conferences went to market, that was kind of the increased amount that was going to happen. And so, it's great to go to the new Pac-12 and get $9 or $10 million a year in a media deal. But I think the Mountain West could have gotten 7. And that doesn't even take into account the possibility of Oregon State and Washington State joining that conference. Maybe you could get it up to 8 in the new in the revised, in this hypothetical non-existent version of the Mountain West. Frankly, sure, could the Mountain West in its older form have given you close to what you're going to get in the new Pac-12? I think that's absolutely the case. And something that people talk about all the time in the Mountain West Pac-12 discussion is the dead weight of the Mountain West. And the schools that they're generally talking about are Wyoming, San Jose State, New Mexico, and Reno. And I would just say that what these people do not understand about these schools and about what value the Mountain West provides anyway is that the biggest value proposition of the Mountain West, at least in its older form and continuing into its newer form, is its TV time slot. These schools are valuable to media companies because they play at advantageous times. They give you affordable options in late time slots, not the old, not the new Big Ten late time slots, but a much cheaper version of that at a fifth of the cost of the Big Ten schools. And that can provide inventory. And so these deadweight schools, one, I think that's a little overblown in terms of the deadweight. One, because like every big conference has schools that don't do as well, with the exception of a conference like the Big 12, which is pretty deep. And, you see how the Big 12 is doing right now. The Big 12 is a great conference. It's very deep, but, the parity in that league really hurts it in terms of its national brands and competing for college football playoff spots. Look at the SEC. Look at the Big Ten. Look at the ACC. These conferences all have schools at the bottom that struggle. A conference's ability to succeed is based on its ability to give its best teams the best possible chance at the best possible bowl game, meaning the college football playoff. Conferences that are incredibly deep tend to kind of struggle. The old Pac-12 kind of ran into this issue sometime as well, because the schools just beat up on each other. A conference's best ability is its ability to put its best brands forward every single year, and build an environment conducive to winning for its top brands, so that its top brands can get into college football playoffs. And so when you call, schools like Reno and New Mexico deadweight, both of those schools have very good basketball programs. When you call San Jose a deadweight, I just kind of reject that notion, because San Jose's kind of and look, I'm not saying their attendance or their viewership or their stadium is in the greatest situation, but San Jose is really close. It's in a very good location travel wise. Its football program has been pretty solid over the last 5 years. It just has. It's been better than San Diego State for the last few years. It's been better than Utah State for the last couple of years. Like, San Jose is not a joke of a football program. It's just not. And Wyoming's not a joke of a football program, although that program does obviously present logistical issues. My point that I'm getting at here is that San Diego State and I think Boise State definitely we're trying to get out of this conference at all costs. And I would just say to them that in the coming years, 2030, 2031, everybody's expecting there to be a massive realignment. And these schools are going to regret their decision to invest so heavily on this choice that it could materially limit their ability to compete well in the next choice. And the next choice, the 2030, the possible Super League, the possible explosion of the ACC, the possible explosion of the Big 12, that's the choice that really matters. And taking this fight right now was not the correct decision. Now, I don't really blame Utah State. Once the original Mountain West 4 schools left the conference, I wish UNLV had done what Utah State did and kind of jumped ship and abandoned the Mountain West. So I don't really blame Utah State in this. They weren't the original ones to make the decision. But those other 4 schools, when they could have gotten similar, if not slightly less, obviously, similar media deals to what they're going to get in the new Pac-12, without the risk, without the give, another thing people don't understand is they're forfeiting their NCAA tournament revenue sharing that they've earned in the Mountain West. Any NCAA tournament run that any school goes on that's leaving for the new Pac-12 this year, that's going to stay in the Mountain West. If Boise State makes the college football playoff again, just like their run last year, that money's going to stay in the Mountain West. Then they have to pay the exit fees. And I understand that there has been this belief that these exit fees will be negotiated down. I don't really believe in the legal power of the poaching penalty. That seems like a penalty as opposed to, a part of a legally enforceable contract. But the exit fees absolutely have legal power and legal precedent. Yes, people negotiate down the exit fees, but generally that's done not always. It's not usually done in mediation. It's usually just done by the parties before leaving the conference. SMU still paid $25 million of their $28 million in exit fees. Texas and Oklahoma, there was still a nearly $100 million payment made to the Big 12. These Mountain West schools leaving are legally owed or legally due $18 million each to the conference. That represents the 6-year media term that they're not going to be a part of, and a not quite all of their media deal, but say around $3 million each year for each school for that upcoming media deal that they're not going to be a part of. They're still going to have to pay a lot of that. Now, I don't think it's going to be 18 million per school, but I would be shocked if it's less than 15 million, to be honest with you, just because exit fees have been upheld. They have. There's precedent there. Poaching penalty, I don't think that's going to happen, but exit fees, that's $15 million per school that's going to be charged to these new Pac-12 schools. So not only are they forfeiting their revenue, now obviously a lot of their revenue, that they're forfeiting will go toward that exit fee number. So it's not like they're, getting double penalized. They're not losing their revenue and then also having to pay an exit fee. It goes towards the payment of that exit fee, but they're losing that. They're losing that revenue right now, and they're having to pay maybe $10 million in an exit fee on top of that. And here's the thing: none of these universities, and this isn't to say anything negative about these Pac-12 schools. And I'm not talking about Oregon State and Washington State. Obviously, they're still in their own conference, or Gonzaga. None of these schools are in financially good shape. And that's not to say that any school in the group of five, or even 95 to 99% of all schools in college athletics, they're all in bad shape. But these schools are not in good financial shape. San Diego State a few years ago ran out a $35 million deficit when they were building Snapdragon Stadium. They had a $95 million expense year where they generated around $60 million. Boise State heavily subsidizes their athletic program, as does every program. Every program does this. But Boise State basically runs even every single year. And you're talking about adding a $10 million, $10 to $15 million exit fee on top of that. And starting to revenue share with players, which is another big consideration here. Colorado State has made huge financial investments into their school, rightly so, with Canvas Stadium, their new football stadium. And they just barely either break even or go under. And Utah State and Fresno State are easily in the worst financial position of these new Pac-12 schools. Fresno State is kind of being screwed over by the California and university system. They've got money that should be being given to them, but they just don't have it. And Utah State just is not a huge revenue generating university. Probably a lot of that's geography, kind of like Wyoming. Obviously, Logan's a lot better than Laramie, but the point is, you are asking schools that are already running at deficits, already being heavily subsidized, already about to have to revenue share 15 to 20% of their athletics revenue with student athletes, and forfeiting NCAA tournament and college football playoff / bowl revenue. You're asking these schools right now to take on this huge financial risk when they could have stayed in the Mountain West, done very well, done very similarly in terms of their media deal. Maybe not quite as high, but with stability, they wouldn't be depending on litigation. And yeah, that's the other thing. All of these schools are burning money on litigation costs. I believe Boise State, Colorado State, Utah State, all are named as a part of the lawsuit to try and make it so that they don't have to pay these exit fees. It's an insane. I mean, think of the millions of dollars the Pac-12 is burning on legal fees right now in a time where universities need to be able to pay players in a sustainable way. It's an insane ask. And look, the Mountain West schools getting left behind, they're not in the greatest shape either. The Mountain West is trying to help that out by using these exit and poaching fees, whatever they get from them, to help subsidize their athletic departments for the next 6 years. But at least they're not dependent on litigation, like the new Pac-12 schools are. And I think that is perhaps the biggest criticism that I've seen from the Pac-12 is that trying to, and this goes to like Florida State, Clemson, when you are universities that try and do everything in court to try and null agreements, it's just not a great look, to be honest with you. And so you'll see a lot of Pac-12 fans be like, oh, well, we have to be doing this for a reason. Look at the dead weight in the Mountain West. And I always say, like, that weight isn't nearly as dead as you think it is. And you're trying to justify a financial decision that just was not justifiable. Now, that does not mean that the Pac-12 will not survive financially. It's just going to be a huge strain on these schools, a huge strain, massive. I am going to be incredibly interested to look at the athletic budgets of each of these schools in the new Pac-12, see what percentage is subsidized, see what they're generating, see what their media deal is. They are basically trying to, build a ship as it's flying when they didn't have to. And the biggest point overriding all of this is the top Pac-12 schools, your Oregon State. I think it's Oregon State and Boise State are probably the two top Pac-12 schools. And then San Diego State and Washington State probably in a slightly lower tier. Those top four schools come the 2031, 2032 season. Um, None of those schools are going to have any loyalty to this new Pac 12. Their goal, just like UNLV's goal, is going to be to abandon it as soon as possible to try and join the ACC or the Big 12, to try and join a actual power league, which this new Pac 12 is not. And the schools like Fresno State, Colorado State, Utah State, they're going to be left in the dust. And I just think that it is financial insanity to try and do this. Now they're going to try and do it. They're going to go for it. I'm not saying this is going to stop them. They're going to go for it. They're going to try and justify the cost. They're going to make the best of it, just like the schools in the new Mountain West are going to try and make the best of it. They made a calculated risk that by not, securing UNLV and maybe one other school from the Mountain West or any of the AAC schools, they took a risk, and I think that they kind of swung out, and now they're going to have to make do with what they have. But it is financially crazy to do this. It has been, and these schools know it. There's a reason that Boise State has been talking about private equity, and why I would expect a lot of these schools to be talking about private equity. It's a big risk, and the big risk could pay off. It could, or not. We don't really know. All we do know is that the real fight, the real change in college football, that's in 2031 and 2032. So you're kind of blowing it out early. You're kind of, I don't want to use that phrase, but you're shooting your shot a little too early here, because these power conferences, regardless of how the Pac-12 performs, in the new era, the power conferences are the one that get to decide essentially whether you're a power conference or not. They're not going to give autonomous status back to the Pac-12. And, I would caution the Pac-12 people to assume that they're going to have something close to an auto bid to the college football playoff. In reality, group of 5 teams that go 11-1 or 12-0, they're going to make the college football playoff essentially regardless of what conference they're in. And so a 9-3 Pac-12 team is not going to go to the college football playoff over an 11-1 Mountain West team. It's just not. That's just not the way that the history has borne itself out. I've gone through all of the G5 schools that have had excellent records since the college football playoff era began. And the Pac-12, if they start missing out on college football playoffs, that's a problem. That's a problem for their brand as the best group of 5 conference, which they are, which the Pac-12 absolutely is. The other thing that I think is kind of crazy is that the Pac-12 is assuredly sharing football revenue with a non-football playing school. Now the Mountain West might be doing that too with Grand Canyon, but the Mountain West isn't relying on the outcomes of litigation to be financially secure, whereas the Pac-12 is, and sharing what I would imagine is a full share with Gonzaga. Otherwise, I don't know why Gonzaga would have joined the Pac-12 unless they were getting something very close to a full share of the Pac-12 media deal. Because one, they're valuable in basketball, but sharing football revenue with a non-football school, that's another reason why that Pac-12 media payout might not be as big as you think it is. If you're sharing part of your football generating revenue with a non-football school. So just in closing, I want to say that the risk that the Pac-12 schools took is absolutely so stupid. I mean, it's really dumb. And the schools, there's going to be some schools left behind here. The Mountain West, the only school in the Mountain West, and I get that Pac-12 fans won't want to hear this, the only school in the Mountain West that has any capability, there's 2 that have capabilities of moving conferences by 2032, is UNLV and Air Force. I think the ACC is really vulnerable, and UNLV could put itself in a position to join the ACC in 2030 after a lot of its top schools leave, which is predicted, could happen. We don't really know. You're taking a risk either way. And Air Force will always have a place with the other service academies, joining the AAC or whatever conference they're in. So Air Force does have kind of an exit. But neither of those things are guaranteed. Whereas with the Pac-12, Oregon State and Washington State can, have a ton of control over that conference, just in the bylaws of how the Pac-12 is set up. These Pac-12 schools, if they want to put themselves in a position to join a power conference in 2030, they're going to have to deal with exit fees. The Mountain West schools aren't. And I think that the Pac-12 schools, your Boise's, your Fresno's, your SDSU's, could have negotiated that same clause in the new Mountain West media deal as they have in the new Pac-12 media deal. As the new Mountain West media deal has with schools like UNLV, Air Force. Actually, every school in the new Mountain West can leave for a Power 4 without an exit fee. That level of financial flexibility goes a long way. And so it's fiscal irresponsibility. And I think that these schools are going to pay for it. Not that they're not going to survive, not that they're not going to get by, but if I was especially a fan of schools like Fresno, even honestly Boise, because they don't spend the kind of money that schools like San Diego State even do. Colorado State has a bigger budget than Boise. Like all of these schools are just going to have some financial stress that they're going to have to deal with. And we're going to see how they do it. I'm very interested. The Mountain West could have been a great home for all of them. And they were so determined to get out of the conference that they destroyed a conference that's been really good to them. And so, you know, I hope the dead weight was worth it. And they're going to tell themselves that it is. And their financing and accounting departments at their schools are going to look at them and say it wasn't. So that's all I had for today. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Please do like and subscribe to the Let's Run podcast. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps a ton. I appreciate you checking out the show, and let's run.